others who deserve the peace that this life has to offer. Now, you see, a few months ago, I was invited to deliver a commencement address at a local high school here in Washington, D.C. And when I initially got the invitation, I was overjoyed. I sat down and I began to write some words that I thought were going to be the most inspiring words that I've ever written as an orator. Life quickly robbed me of some of that joy. As the months passed and troubling news headlines flashed across our TV screens the world around, I realized that I began writing the wrong speech. When a domestic terrorist attack claimed the lives of over 10 in Buffalo, I realized that enough was enough. When it was followed this next day by a gunman in Laguna Woods, California, who killed one person and injured 4, I realized that the remarks that I was about to prepare were rooted in an idealism that we had not yet arrived at. I realized that in a world where people can't safely buy groceries, where they can't go to schools, where they can't attend church in peace, that saying that everything would be okay or that everything is okay would be a lie, would be disingenuous, wouldn't be helpful to the work that we're trying to do to actually change the conditions that govern the world today. I realized when I witnessed the tragic loss of life in Uvalde, Texas, that there is no easy way out of the world that we've created. I realized that there is so much work left to do. You see, every day in the United States, there are over 100 people that are shot and killed, and hundreds more that are injured. Here in Washington, D.C., it's no different. Right up the street from the hallowed halls of Congress and the White House is a Washington, D.C. that leads the nation in the rate of gun homicides. I say that again. Washington, D.C. is the #1 leader of gun homicides in the entire nation. Christopher Adams, Grant DeSumnu, Terrence William Jones, Sage Ballard, Jamari Sidner, Devon McNeil. The list goes on. While it's the school shootings and other mass shootings that are often the most sensationalized, it is the scourge of gun violence in urban black and brown communities that is the most experienced by the statistics. There is no excuse for this senseless gun violence, though, especially when we are in a world where legislative solutions presently exist for our members of Congress, members of the House and the Senate, right now in this very moment. See, a few years ago, I traveled across the country during the Democratic presidential primary, and I was meeting candidates where they were in Iowas and New Hampshires, earning endorsements for D.C. statehood with 51 votes in the Senate. And when I was having those conversations back then, the conversations that I would have with our elected officials is that all social progress is hinged on our ability to get there with 51 votes in the Senate. By passing the filibuster, which remains to this day a Jim Crow relic that is standing in the way of so much civil rights legislation and so much civil progress, we cannot allow it to block the most urgent civil rights fights of our time. Now, you see, gun violence here in America is a national emergency. It's a public health crisis. And the only thing that can explain the relative inaction of the American elected officials around this issue, aside from being in bed with the NRA, is the antiquated notion that is the filibuster, something that has held up progress for far too long. Now, you see, by the numbers, gun violence is the leading cause of death here in the United States for young people in America. Every single year, there are tens of thousands of Americans that are killed for no reason at all, simply because Congress refuses to pass meaningful laws that would stand and protect them. Now, you see, there are those who are lobbied to by NRA, who use this procedural filibuster to hide behind standing up for what is right, to hide behind common sense solutions like background checks, like red flag laws, things that are agreed upon by Americans on all parts of the political spectrum. You see, what I speak of are the common sense solutions that are supported by the majority of Americans, inclusive of gun owners. When I stand before you today, I'm not advocating for the elimination of firearms entirely. You see, because for as long as can be remembered, people have hunted. For as long as can be remembered, people have wanted a right to protect themselves and to protect their property. These are things that have been done for as long as America has been America, and even in times before then. What I'm calling for is not an end to that. What I'm saying, though, is that there is never a reason why any American needs weapons of mass destruction at their disposal. There is never a reason why abusive partners should be allowed to buy firearms when we understand that it's likely that they'll terrorize their former lover. There is never a reason why somebody with a history of mental illness should be able to get a gun easier than many Americans are able to get a vote. The U.S. House passed legislation to expand background checks over a year ago, and it passed with bipartisan support. Yet still, we are watching as the filibuster has blocked so many of these life-saving measures from getting to an actual vote on the U.S. Senate. In that time alone, we've witnessed tens of thousands of American deaths, tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths. Now, you see, when we saw tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths to the pandemic, we realized that we needed to have a war against COVID. When we see tens of thousands of deaths in any other instance, we realize that we need to fight against some force. Why then do we not have that same sense of urgency around gun violence? When is enough going to be enough? With over 50,000 bodies told up over the course of this past year and some change since that legislation is passed, what is the number that will satisfy the American leaders before they decide that there's time to move to make sure that all Americans are safe from the fear of gun violence? Now, you see, as I stand here before you today, I'm here to acknowledge the truth that there is no reason why any Democrat should oppose pushing through sensible solutions to our problems by all means necessary. Not just with gun violence, but with all things. It's immigration reform, it's reproductive justice, it's revisiting public safety, it's college debt forgiveness, equity in education and the allocation of resources. The work of realizing the American dream for all is unfinished. But for us to remain here dedicated to that work, I know that we can get it done. It's time for our leaders to stand up for the people and to show that they are really with us in the same way that we're with them. Because you see, I remember hearing about a government that was of the people, by the people, and for the people. I have yet to realize that government, but I hope that over the course of my life and over the course of my beautiful daughter Giselle, who's about to be 1, over the course of her life, that she can experience that government. A government that is both proactive and responsive to the needs of the American people. You see, because we've had the White House, we've had the House, we've had the Senate. Now is the time for us to prioritize the rights of the people that brought us to power. The progressive energy that pushed Democrats into office can move any of the holdouts out of place should they decide not to stand on the right side of history. All power to the people. Thank you.